We all crave love. From childhood, we're taught to believe that being kind, agreeable, and selfless will earn us affection. We're told that if we just show others our best selves, they'll respond with loyalty and care. But what no one warns us about is the brutal truth. Love is fragile. It is conditional, fleeting, and easily withdrawn at the first sign of disappointment. One mistake, one moment of vulnerability or misstep, and the love you worked so hard to earn can vanish. This is the trap. When you live for love, you become hostage to it. Now consider fear, not the fear that breeds hatred or abuse, but the kind of respectful fear that creates boundaries, fear that communicates strength, consequence, and authority. Unlike love, fear endures. People remember how far they can push you. They calculate whether the cost of disrespect is worth the risk. Where love fades with mood and circumstance, fear, when balanced with dignity, leaves a lasting impression. Machiavelli saw this clearly. He knew that in the arena of leadership and influence, it is far safer to be feared than loved. Because love invites expectation. It demands constant validation. Fear, on the other hand, commands respect without the need for endless approval. When people fear the cost of crossing you, they think twice. And in a world where power is fragile and easily stolen, that hesitation could be your greatest defense. The harsh truth is this: if you rely solely on being liked, you will be betrayed. If you lean only on being loved, you will be replaced. But if you earn measured, respectful fear, you secure something far more durable: control. Real authority begins the moment you stop chasing affection and start commanding presence. You were raised to be kind, to smile, to accommodate, to never make waves. And for a while it seemed to work. People liked you, you were easy to be around. But somewhere along the line, that kindness started to feel like a burden. You found yourself being overlooked, dismissed, and even used. Because kindness without boundaries isn't seen as strength, it's mistaken for weakness. In a world that rewards dominance, not deference, being too nice becomes an open invitation for exploitation. Every time you say yes when you mean no, every time you let someone cross a line without consequence, you train them to keep pushing. The harsh truth is, people don't respect what's always available. They don't value what never pushes back. And those who never say enough become the ones silently suffering under the weight of others' expectations. This isn't to say kindness is wrong, but kindness must be paired with clarity. It must come with self-respect, or it will be used against you. When you give endlessly, without limits, you attract people who take endlessly without guilt. That's not generosity. That's self-abandonment. True strength lies in being able to say no without apology, in drawing a line and meaning it, in showing up with empathy but not allowing empathy to become a doorway to your own destruction. You are not weak for being kind, but you are vulnerable if you are kind without boundaries. So ask yourself, is your kindness a reflection of your strength or a mask for your fear? The difference will determine whether you are respected or simply tolerated. Machiavelli's most controversial idea is also his most misunderstood. It is better to be feared than loved, if you cannot be both. At first glance, it sounds ruthless, even heartless. But beneath that harsh exterior lies a brutal wisdom forged by observing how power actually works in the real world. Machiavelli wasn't advocating cruelty. He was warning us, love is a luxury, but fear, when measured and respected, is a necessity. In leadership, in influence, even in personal relationships, love is often conditional. It's subject to emotions, misunderstandings, and shifting loyalties. One day you're admired, the next you're abandoned. But fear, not terror, but respectful fear, creates a boundary that love alone cannot. It tells others there are limits here. Cross them, and there will be consequences. Think about the people you respect most. Is it because you love them, or is it because you know they don't tolerate disrespect? Machiavellian leadership is not about being cruel, it's about being strategic. It's about understanding human nature and accepting that people often act out of self-interest. If kindness makes you disposable, authority, grounded in earned respect, makes you indispensable. When others know that you are kind, but not soft, generous, but not a pushover, empathetic, but not naive, that's when true leadership begins. That's when you stop managing approval and start commanding presence. Machiavelli wasn't teaching domination. He was teaching survival. And in a world full of masks and manipulation, survival is power. True authority is not built on charm or blind obedience. It's built on balance. According to Machiavelli, the two pillars of real power are law and force. Law provides structure. It tells people what is expected, what is right, what is fair. But law alone is not enough. Without the presence of force to back it up, laws become empty suggestions. They're ignored, bent, or quietly broken when convenient. Respect fades and order collapses. On the other hand, force without law becomes brutality. It sparks rebellion, resentment, and fear that festers into hatred. When a leader rules only by strength, they may gain obedience, but they lose the people's trust. And once that trust is broken, their downfall is only a matter of time. The genius of Machiavellian leadership lies in walking this line, being powerful without being oppressive, decisive without being reckless. A smart leader enforces boundaries clearly and firmly, not out of anger, but out of necessity. They understand that discipline creates security, and security breeds respect. It's easy to be liked when things are easy, but real leadership shows up when tough calls must be made, when you must choose what is right, even when it's not what is popular. In that moment, people don't need a friend, they need someone they trust to hold the line. That trust doesn't come from love alone. It comes from knowing you have the strength to act when it matters, and the wisdom to hold back when it doesn't. Because in the end, true authority is not about control, it's about stability. And only those who understand how to balance law and force can provide it. Love is beautiful, but it is fragile. It depends on feelings, timing, and convenience. One wrong word, one misunderstood gesture, and the affection you once received can vanish without warning. People forget acts of kindness. They overlook the loyalty you gave them. In a world that moves fast and values results, love is often a fleeting currency, offered freely but easily withdrawn. Respect, however, is built differently. It's carved slowly over time through strength, consistency, and boundaries. And once earned, it lasts. Machiavelli understood that the admiration people give you from love is soft and unstable. It's based on how you make them feel. But the respect that stems from principled firmness, especially the kind that includes a healthy fear of crossing your limits, is much harder to erase. It's not dependent on moods or approval. It's rooted in memory and reinforced through behavior. The truth is harsh, but liberating. People respect what they fear losing, not what is always readily available. If you're always kind, always agreeable, always trying to be loved, you become forgettable. People may smile to your face, but behind your back, they calculate how far they can go without consequence. And once they stop seeing you as someone with standards, they stop seeing you at all. This doesn't mean becoming cold or cruel. It means becoming clear. Let your kindness have limits. Let your presence have weight. Make sure people know that while you are capable of generosity, you are also capable of walking away. Because when people fear the loss of your respect more than they desire your approval, they treat you differently. They speak more carefully. They act more thoughtfully. They remember who you are. And in the end, it's not love that will protect your dignity. It's respect that endures. Predictability is comforting, but only for followers. For a leader, it's a trap. When people always know how you'll react, they begin to feel safe in testing your limits. They anticipate your forgiveness, your silence, your compliance. Over time, your authority becomes routine, your strength diluted by expectations. That's why Machiavelli emphasized the power of strategic unpredictability, not chaos, but intentional surprise. The kind that shakes complacency, reminds people that your boundaries are not to be assumed. Think about it. Who commands more respect? The leader who always reacts the same way, or the one whose silence could signal calm or a storm? When others cannot predict you, they tread carefully. They watch what they say. They measure their actions. You create a subtle pressure that does not require constant force. It's not about keeping people afraid. It's about keeping them alert. This doesn't mean being erratic or manipulative. It means choosing when to act and how to respond with precision. A sudden act of firmness when it's least expected becomes legendary. A quiet withdrawal of approval speaks louder than 1,000 warnings. People remember the leader who speaks little but makes every word count. In leadership, it's not enough to be consistent, you must be strategic. Predictability breeds comfort. Comfort breeds complacency. But surprise resets the dynamic. It reminds people not to take your presence or your tolerance for granted. Let your kindness be a choice, not a habit. Let your silence carry weight, not weakness. And let your unpredictability become your most powerful signal that you are not to be assumed, defined, or controlled. In a world full of patterns, be the exception. Because when no one can fully read you, no one can easily underestimate you. And that's when true authority begins. Power comes with a silent cost that few are prepared for. Loneliness. Not the surface-level loneliness of being without people, but the deeper kind, the kind that comes from realizing that the higher you rise, the fewer people can truly stand beside you. Real leadership requires emotional independence. You cannot rely on constant validation, applause, or understanding, because leadership often demands decisions that others don't like or even understand. Most people crave connection and approval, but a leader cannot afford to be ruled by those needs. The moment your self-worth depends on others agreeing with you, you've already lost your edge. You become predictable, compromise your clarity, and surrender your authority to collective emotions. That's why Machiavelli warned, power is not for those who fear solitude. It belongs to those who are strong enough to be misunderstood, yet remain unmoved. Great leaders make hard choices not because they're heartless, but because they see further than most. They act for the long game while others react to the moment. And often that means walking a lonely road, criticized, questioned, even betrayed by those they once trusted. But this solitude is not a curse. It's a crucible. It forges strength, clarity, and emotional freedom. Without it, your leadership becomes diluted by insecurity and noise. The paradox of power is this: the more independent you become, the more influence you gain. People may not always like you, but they will respect you. And in time, even those who doubted your choices will look back and realize why you made them. So if you feel the weight of solitude, don't run from it. Lean into it. Use it. Let it sharpen your vision. Because true leaders aren't carried by crowds. They're defined by the strength they show when they stand alone. In a world obsessed with transparency and oversharing, one of the most underestimated powers is mystery. Great leaders are not open books. They are carefully written manuscripts, with key pages intentionally missing. To protect your power, you must protect your intentions. Because the moment people fully understand how you think, move, and decide, they begin to predict you. And what is predictable is controllable. Machiavelli understood this well. He taught that a leader should never allow others to fully read their next move. Why? Because people don't fear what they understand. They fear what they can't. That uncertainty creates tension. And tension, when managed properly, becomes quiet influence. You don't need to shout. You don't need to remind people of your power. Your silence, your restraint, your unknowns, do it for you. Think of it this way: people can't attack what they can't define. They can't betray what they don't truly grasp. When your goals, strategies, and emotional responses remain partially hidden, you stay one step ahead. You create a sense of presence, of weight, that forces others to consider you before they act. That is power, invisible, but undeniable. This isn't about deception, it's about strategy. You can still be authentic without being exposed. You can still connect with people without laying your soul bare. Protecting your inner world isn't weakness, it's wisdom. Because once you give everything away, your thoughts, your patterns, your vulnerabilities, you hand over the tools others need to manipulate you. So hold something back. Let them wonder. Let them second guess. Let your unpredictability be a reminder. You are not to be underestimated. In the game of power, your silence speaks louder than your explanations, and your mystery guards more than your walls ever could. Powerful leadership doesn't begin with controlling others. It begins with understanding them. Machiavelli knew that human beings are not as noble as they pretend to be. They're not moved by ideals or abstract morals, but by fear, desire, and self-interest. And the leaders who ignore these core motivators often find themselves betrayed, misunderstood, or overthrown, not because they were wrong, but because they were naive. If you want to influence someone, you must know what moves them. What do they fear losing? What are they desperately trying to gain? What is their price? These questions are the hidden map to every interaction. While others chase approval, the strategic leader studies emotion, quietly observing what people react to, what they avoid, and what they crave most. This is not manipulation, this is awareness. People rarely act from logic, they act from emotion. And emotion is predictable. A person who feels threatened will obey. A person who feels valued will remain loyal. A person who believes their interests are tied to yours will protect you as if they were protecting themselves. This is the psychology of influence, not domination. Most people project their own ideals onto the world and expect others to think and act the same. That's why they're constantly disappointed. But the Machiavellian leader accepts the truth of human nature, not with cruelty, but with clarity. And in that clarity, they gain the advantage. So ask yourself, do you try to change people, or do you learn what drives them? Influence doesn't come from being good. It comes from being aware. When you master the emotions behind the actions, you no longer chase power. You become the one people instinctively follow, because you see them more clearly than they see themselves. Authority is not something you claim once and hold forever. It's something you must strategically maintain every single day. Many people believe that once they've earned a title, a reputation, or respect, it will stick. But Machiavelli warned us otherwise. Power is fragile, and the moment you stop reinforcing it, it begins to fade. Leadership is not a straight line. It's a constant negotiation between strength and perception. If you show too much force too often, people become numb to it. Your commands lose weight. But if you're too passive, your absence becomes an invitation for others to challenge your role. The true art lies in knowing when to strike and when to step back, when to be visible and when to be silent, when to allow small mistakes and when to make an example. Your authority must be like a flame, not too wild, or it will burn everything down, not too weak, or it will be extinguished by a whisper. It must be fed through calculated actions, timely words, and strategic restraint. You do not need to prove yourself constantly, but you must remind others subtly and consistently that your presence matters. And here's the emotional truth. Maintaining authority is exhausting. It requires discipline, awareness, and the willingness to act even when it's uncomfortable. It means being willing to be misunderstood for the sake of what's necessary. It means putting outcomes over applause. If you seek to be liked more than respected, your authority will always be at risk. But if you lead with intention, if you understand that authority is earned in moments of clarity, decisiveness, and quiet power, then you'll never need to beg for it. People will feel it when you walk into the room. They'll measure their words, not because you demanded respect, but because you embodied it. The strongest leaders are not those who exert constant pressure. They are the ones who know exactly when to release it. Authority, like any force, must be managed with rhythm. Apply it endlessly, and people grow resentful, even rebellious. Withhold it completely, and they grow complacent. But used with intention, pressure becomes a tool of transformation. Machiavelli understood that true power lies in control, not force. Sometimes the best way to reinforce your authority isn't by commanding, it's by stepping back, letting others make mistakes, letting them feel the weight of their own choices. In doing so, you create contrast. You allow people to realize through experience why your presence matters, why your decisions held value. This is leadership that transcends ego. It's not about being the loudest voice in the room, but the one they miss when you're quiet, the one they think about when things begin to fall apart. You don't need to dominate every moment. You need to frame it. Because when people learn through their own failures, your wisdom becomes undeniable. And when you do re-enter the scene, measured, composed, intentional, your presence has gravity. You're not just reacting, you're responding. That distinction is everything. Emotionally, this requires maturity. The insecure leader clings to control, fearing irrelevance. The wise leader knows that space is a form of strength. That letting go at the right moment builds deeper loyalty than constant supervision ever could. So don't fear the silence. Don't fear the space between your actions. In those moments, respect either grows or collapses. And those who master this delicate balance become the leaders who don't just command people's actions, but their lasting trust. Remember, power isn't proven through pressure. It's revealed through restraint. In a world where everyone rushes to speak, silence becomes a weapon, quiet, sharp, and unforgettable. The greatest leaders don't always say more, they say less, but with intent. Machiavelli knew that power isn't always in the words you use, it's in the tension your silence creates. When you remain silent, people begin to project. They imagine your thoughts, your judgments, your strategies. That space, those unspoken moments, becomes a mirror for their own insecurities. Suddenly, your silence speaks louder than their noise. It forces reflection, self-doubt, and respect. But silence is not passivity, it's precision. It's the discipline to observe rather than react, to wait rather than rush, to calculate the impact of words before releasing them. In those moments, you're not withholding power, you're magnifying it. The insecure leader fills every space with words, hoping to prove authority. But true authority doesn't explain itself. It doesn't beg to be understood. It commands attention without demanding it. That's the paradox of silence. It draws others in, makes them listen harder, think deeper. Strategic silence is also mercy. It spares unnecessary conflict. It prevents words from becoming weapons. And when finally broken, your voice lands with clarity, not clutter. You speak not to be heard, but to be remembered. Emotionally, silence takes strength. It means holding space for discomfort, uncertainty, even misunderstanding. But within that discomfort lies control. And within that control, you define the rules of engagement, not them. So master the silence. Let it speak when your words don't need to. Let it carry your presence long after you've left the room. Because in the game of power, the one who speaks least often leads most. Praise is powerful, but only when it's earned. In leadership, too much praise dilutes its value. Given freely and often, it becomes noise, expected, dismissed, even manipulated. But when used sparingly, praise becomes a tool of influence, more effective than any command or criticism. Machiavelli understood that people crave validation, but they respect what is rare. A well-timed, specific compliment doesn't just reward effort, it sends a signal. I see you, I value you, and I don't offer this lightly. That kind of acknowledgement creates loyalty deeper than fear. It makes people feel chosen, recognized not for who they pretend to be, but for what they've truly contributed. But there's a critical difference between praise and appeasement. Flattery seeks approval. Strategic praise builds trust. It reinforces standards without lowering them. It motivates without creating dependency. It tells people you did well, but not because I need you to like me, because you earned it. Used at the right moment, praise can change someone's entire trajectory. It can anchor them to your vision. But overused, it becomes white noise, forgotten as quickly as it's heard. And worse, it invites entitlement. People begin to expect applause for mediocrity. Emotionally, this approach requires restraint. As a leader, you may feel compelled to encourage constantly, especially when morale is low. But encouragement without purpose is hollow. True motivation comes from knowing that when recognition finally comes, it means something. So speak your praise like it's gold. Weigh it, shape it, deliver it with presence, let it echo long after it's said. Because in the world of leadership, praise isn't just a gift, it's a currency. And only those who spend it wisely build lasting respect. In the world of leadership, you will have rivals. Some declare themselves openly, others lurk in shadows, waiting for the moment you stumble. But here's the truth Machiavelli understood better than most. The most dangerous enemy is not the loud one, it's the one who doesn't know you've already seen them. The instinct to immediately confront your rivals is tempting, but a wise leader knows patience exposes more than pressure ever will. When you rush to destroy, you reveal your fears. But when you observe in silence, you allow them to grow confident, even reckless. That's when they make mistakes. That's when they show their true intentions without even realizing it. Let your rivals speak. Let them posture. Let them believe they are gaining ground. And all the while, you are listening, learning, watching. This is not cowardice, it's control. You're not avoiding conflict. You're setting the stage for a victory that is decisive, strategic, and undeniable. And when the moment comes, when they overreach, when they expose their ambition or weakness, you don't need to strike with anger. You strike with precision. Cold, clear, final. Let their fall serve as a silent message to others. This is what happens when you underestimate power that watches without warning. This strategy does more than eliminate threats. It builds your legend. Others begin to fear challenging you, not because you're cruel, but because your restraint makes your decisions unpredictable and absolute. In time, even your enemies will wonder if they're simply pawns in a larger plan they'll never fully see. So don't rush the battle. Don't demand immediate submission. Let your rivals reveal themselves. Because the greatest victories are not those won through brute force. They are the ones earned through calm observation, quiet strength, and perfectly timed action. Anyone can lead when the waters are calm, but true leadership is forged in crisis, in case, in fear, in the exact moment when everything feels like it's slipping away. It's in those rare, defining moments when people look for stability and all eyes turn to you, silently asking, "What now?" This is where your character is revealed. Not in your plans, but in your presence. Not in what you say when all is going well, but in what you choose not to say when pressure mounts. Machiavelli understood that power isn't about appearing strong, it's about being unshakable when others tremble. When a leader panics, the whole system collapses. When a leader hesitates, doubt spreads like fire. But when a leader stands firm, not arrogant, not dismissive, but calm, a strange kind of magic happens. Fear gives way to trust. Chaos bows to clarity. Emotional control in crisis is not just admirable, it's essential. It signals to others, we are not broken. We are not lost. We are simply being tested. And when your people see that you are not undone by pressure, they borrow strength from you. You become their anchor, even when the storm is far from over. This kind of composure doesn't come from ego. It comes from preparation, from self-awareness, and from the quiet acceptance that leadership will always carry weight. The crisis doesn't define the leader, it reveals the leader. So the next time everything seems to be falling apart, ask yourself not, how do I fix this? But who must I become in this moment? Because in the end, people don't remember who was loudest. They remember who stood tall when everyone else fell. Power, at its core, is not something you own. It's something others believe you possess. And that's what makes it so fragile, because the moment people stop believing in it, it begins to vanish. Power is a shared illusion, a silent agreement between you and those around you. You lead because they agree to follow. You command because they choose to obey. The second that agreement breaks, so does your authority. Machiavelli understood this unsettling truth centuries ago. That's why he warned, never let others forget who holds the reins. You must reinforce your presence, not with noise or aggression, but with strategy, presence, and unpredictability. Because in the game of power, consistency is not king. Perception is. People don't follow power that feels stagnant. They follow power that feels alive, aware, and constantly adjusting. This doesn't mean living in fear. It means living awake, constantly observing the shifts in mood, allegiance, and loyalty. You must renew the agreement of your authority, not by begging for it, but by making others feel the cost of its absence. Let them imagine what the system looks like without your guidance. Let them taste instability, and then step back in with clarity and control. In real life, this is how respect works too. You don't get to keep it just because you once earned it. You maintain it through presence, boundaries, and consistency. So remember, authority is not permanent, it's a performance. And those who master that performance with intelligence, intention, and restraint, they're the ones history never forgets. Fear may gain obedience, but only respect creates legacy. You can command through intimidation, yes, but the moment you leave the room, the fear fades. People return to their true selves, and so does their loyalty. Shallow, conditional, and fleeting. But when someone respects you, their actions in your absence reflect your influence. That's not just power, it's permanence. Machiavelli warned that it is safer to be feared than loved, but even he knew fear without respect breeds rebellion. It builds silent resentment that festers over time. People may comply, but they will wait. For a moment of weakness, a crack in your armor, a chance to strike back. That kind of authority is brittle. It looks strong on the surface but breaks under pressure. True revival, however, is different. It doesn't need to shout. It doesn't rely on threats. It's born from consistency, clarity, and strength that doesn't waver. A respected leader doesn't need to watch over every move because their values have taken root in others. Their presence is felt, even in silence. Respect is earned not just by what you demand, but by what you demonstrate. Composure under pressure, integrity when no one's watching, boundaries that are firm, not cruel. The ability to listen without losing direction. These traits don't weaken leadership, they cement it. In life, this means choosing long-term trust over short-term control. It means leading with strength, but also with substance. Because when fear fades, and it always does, what remains is how deeply people respected who you were, not just what you could do. So build power, yes, but build it on respect, because respect lasts long after fear forgets. Power, respect, and influence aren't given, they're crafted. The world doesn't reward blind kindness or passive virtue. It rewards awareness, discipline, and the ability to act strategically in a world driven by self-interest, fear, and desire. If there's one lesson to carry forward, it's this. Being nice is not enough. Being respected, deeply, quietly, and unshakably, requires strength, boundaries, and the willingness to make tough decisions. True leadership is not about dominating others. It's about mastering yourself, knowing when to speak, when to stay silent, when to strike, and when to hold back. It's about maintaining composure in chaos, letting rivals expose themselves, and using praise with surgical precision. It's understanding that silence is often louder than words, and unpredictability more powerful than force. In real life, this means learning to say no without guilt, setting boundaries without apology, releasing the need to be liked in favor of living with purpose. Because the leader who commands respect is the one who doesn't beg for it. So ask yourself, are you leading your life or being led by the approval of others? You don't need to become ruthless. You just need to stop being naive. Walk with clarity, speak with intention, and never forget, true strength isn't in being feared or loved. It's in being remembered.